Candace Stewart. Welcome to my podcast, Trade Secrets. Today I have one of my favorite people with us. I say that sometimes, but I really mean it today. Today we have JJ Blair with us.
Hi, Candace.
Hi, babe. He's a producer, mixer, engineer. He's a guitar player. What else do you play?
I have a smattering on everything.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, and it's funny.
Can you play piano?
You know what? I will not say that I'm a pianist, but I can play the keyboards. And believe it or not, I got to play keyboards for The Who for a gig, and no one really...
Was Brian Q sick?
I was subbing for Brian because he was doing his book release party at Abbey Road it was just and he didn't.
What lame
he didn't
excuse
he
is
didn't
that?
he thought I could play keyboards, and I'm just like, I'm doing this. I'm not passing this.
Yeah, fuck
up,
it.
so
I'm going to be on
that's-
stage with him. Well, I love that's cool. Well, that's good to know. It's pretty unscripted, and the purpose of it is basically to kind of show that there's no one way to end up in your dream job. And so I start with the simplest of things. Where were you born?
Chicago.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And high school, grammar school. What did mom and dad do?
They were both in real estate. My mom's and my dad was an attorney also.
Oh, dude, nice.
And he was a huge music fan. He was what back then we called a stereophile, which is now known as an audiophile.
Yes, my brother is one of them.
And in fact, the JBL, I think the S7R, I believe is. I can't remember.
Is it a turntable?
No, the speakers.
Okay.
The speakers that I grew up with in my living room are now in my soffits in my
I
record.
love
These
that.
huge JBL speakers, these 3-ways.
Oh, that's freaking awesome.
So-
When did you go to high school in Chicago?
I graduated from high school in Chicago. I went to high school in a couple different places because
Were you a problem
I
child?
was a problem child.
You were?
Yes.
No.
I've been kicked out of some of the finest schools in the country.
God bless. Well, that must mean you're smart. I mean, I know you're smart, but yeah, you don't get kicked out. Well, oh, never mind. But
Yeah, I graduated from a school called the Lab School of the University of Chicago.
oh wow.
So a lot of smart kids there.
So college?
I pretended to go to college for about a year. I went to University of Redlands. That's where I studied recording. Actually, they had a recording program.
Here?
University of Redlands.
And
yeah.
I was born in Fontana.
Oh,
Isn't that
okay,
right
yeah.
there?
And that was that's where I learned the basic theoretical stuff that everybody needs to know about how sound works, what phase is,
Dude, I still say
how a
it's so
compressor
important
works.
because, you and I both know that nothing teaches like real life, but you've got to have a fundamental understanding of electronics and signal
Well,
flow.
if you know, I don't want to say the laws, but if you know how
Ohm's law.
But
That law's a good law.
Right, exactly. But if you know the theoretical stuff, it makes your job so much easier. You can get better sound.
And I think the light bulb goes off too. I think if you have fundamentals and then you're actually in a studio situation, you're like, oh, that's why that's important, or dipping impedances, et cetera.
Yeah, no, and
normal, not normal, balance, et cetera.
Exactly. I have the type of brain that wants to know how and why things work, and I find it easier.
That's why you're called an engineer.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised. I find it easier to achieve what I want in terms of sound when I know how and why things are doing what they're doing. So I know which tool to use. I know how to use it. I know how to modify it. I know how to change things. And that's So I'm a 120% geek.
We love that.
Yeah.
No, we love the geek.
Big old nerd.
Siblings, brothers and sisters.
I have half siblings. Only one of them lived with us, and she's the youngest. She's 10 years older, so I got exposed to. That was how, when I was 6, I got my first Beatles record and turned on to Elton John and all this.
God bless
stuff.
all the older siblings.
So that was how
What
that worked out.
If Dad was a stereophile, what kind of turntable did he have?
We had the very early Bang & Olufsen.
Nice.
The linear
What
tracking.
was the
I still have
cartridge?
this.
The early cartridge was the Stanton. What was the famous
know.
cartridge? And they had little brushes.
But we had Marantz tube amplifiers.
Oh, nice.
It was the whole
Dude, I got so excited. Keith and I have a turntable in the office. Like Audio Technica gave us the one that's, I think, sort of like the repro of, the TIAC one. Anyway, and I was looking through like what you and I would consider like the online recycler. I can't remember where I was looking, but I said Marantz amp, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited. So I bought it, and it's in my office. It's a home theater surround amp.
Wow.
But I'm like, okay, fuck it, this will work. This will be fine. This will be, be good. But it's not a real.
The old tube Marantz.
It's not the old tube Marantz.
But the interesting thing was, because my dad was a stereophile, we had I think it was a TIAC reel-to-reel.
Yeah.
And my dad had an enormous record collection. What he would do is he would play the record once and record that to reel, so that the record would never get damaged, and we just play the reel-to-reel.
Do you have his records?
I do. So even as a child, I knew I had learned to splice tape and things like that, and learned like.
And not cut off your fingertip.
No, but I would play with the machine, and I knew, how I knew that, you can do things backwards and blah blah blah. So I knew all these various things as a kid. And even like how to, not just splice and put leader on, but how to edit. So as a, so I these were skills that came in handy eventually.
Dude, I was talking to Robert Carranza, and we were talking about just for the 5 seconds that I was helping my brother at Take One back in the day when I first started out and was technically thought I was going to become an assistant, but I didn't. But we're talking about the need to commit, and the need to commit to editing 2-inch, or the need to commit to editing, and how Pro Tools, as wonderful as it is as a tool, kind of got rid of that commit factor and commitment on the performance side as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a whole can of worms with the endless revisionism, especially for people who don't have the ability to make up their mind.
Oh yeah, the indecisive.
And there's, and that's.
Or the self-producing artist.
Yeah.
Who is, if you're listening to this, hire a producer. Hire someone to tell you no and that it's ready. Save yourself a lot of money and a lot of time instead of repolishing and redoing stuff. So, high school, a little bit of college. When did you come to California? You went to Redlands. That's when you came?
I went to Redlands. I spent half a year where I'll tell the story. My first half a year, my blood alcohol level was literally higher than my GPA because I had incompletes and everything.
Oh my God!
And I moved away for a year at the age of 19 to sort of straighten myself out, and then I came back, like having been straightened out. And
was it the love of a good woman? How'd you get straightened out?
I
decided to get your shit together.
Yeah, I rehab all that shit.
Oh wow.
So I hence why I'm drinking a Coca-Cola.
Yeah. Well, I should probably be in rehab right now. I have a hangover. But
I came back. I spent another half a year, and I was just like, I really want to be. I don't know. I what am I going to learn here that's going to get me into music, which is really all I really wanted to do. It's all I've ever wanted to do.
But did you, at that point, did you want to be a famous rock star, or did you want to be behind the glass?
I've always been interested in production.
Got it.
I've always loved the studio. I am, but it's sadly not a muscle that I have been exercising for a while. It's not a habit. It's a habit I used to be in.
Are you playing out right now? Can we go see you play?
I'm injured right now. But generally he
has a broken foot.
Generally, I perform weekly just to stay in shape. Yes.
Kibitz?
Yes.
And what's that band called?
The Friends of Cantor's Kibitz Room.
There you go. That makes sense. So, I keep skipping around. So
a name we've been fighting over for decades. There's so many other names we'd.
So you clean up, you come back, you want to get your foot in the door. What did you do?
Well, I moved to Los Angeles. And believe it or not, I'm kind of shy and insecure. I'm not this.
What?
I'm serious. I'm not this gregarious person who can just go in and cold call. I'd suck at sales. I would be like the worst sales rep ever.
As gregarious as I am, that is something I still have to do that I don't like.
If I know you and I'm comfortable with you, then
But see, that's logical.
right.
It's totally makes common sense that you wouldn't want to call someone you don't know.
Right. And I was, and I was a very different person when I moved here. I was.
Well, we've established you were nerdy and shy.
I had a stutter. I had all kinds of things. Yeah. I was a mess. I was going through all kinds of issues and.
Well, you're handsome now. You're probably handsome.
Thanks. But it, I just wasn't a very confident person, and I could not seem to find a job to get me in any doors. I went and interviewed. I remember I went and interviewed as a runner for Jonathan Elias, and I got beat out by some guy who knew how to make a good martini, things like that.
Did you go to Cherokee? Everybody went to Cherokee to try to get their gig, and then was sorry that they did.
No, I didn't. I couldn't. But I could. It was,
I love the Robs.
In early '90s, it was tough because there were so many people in this town, and it was.
And there was a weird thing that happened in like '88 or '92 with record company budgets had been drastically slashed. Like Radio Killed the Video Star or whatever had come into play. It was one of those cycles around '88, '90 where things were taking a little dive.
But there was it seemed like there was 10 people for every one job, and I didn't have the connections to get me in anywhere, and I couldn't. I was even trying to get a job at Rocket Cargo. Because I'm like, if I can get a job at Rocket Cargo, maybe I can meet Candace while I'm delivering gear and butter her up and let me be a runner or something. And it just wasn't working out. And I was rehearsing at this place called Co-Rehearsal, and it was for sale.
Awesome.
And I, like I said, my mom's in real estate, so she knew bankers, and they like her, and they were able to give me a bank loan for
never going to go wrong buying real estate.
Well, plus, I didn't buy the thing; it was just $80,000. It wasn't like but back in 1992. You could get a business loan for $80,000 before they changed everything, and the regulators made everything very difficult. So I take over this.
Well, and you weren't a black woman, a black American Indian woman,
or anything. But it's just even before it's right now. It's just a very.
Was it an SBA loan? Or just a real estate loan?
It was no, it wasn't real estate. Oh, it was just a business loan.
Oh, okay.
But, I mean, it was a small business, but it was.
So you bought the business.
Correct.
Who owned the land?
Whoever owned the building.
Yeah, and they still do.
We just took over the lease. No, they sold it, and it's part of why I no longer have it.
Is there a fire station there now, or there was a fire station?
That's further up the street.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I'm 22. I get in. All of a sudden, everyone wants to be my friend because everybody rehearsed there,
and they all want free time,
and everybody did their pre-production there.
Oh no!
And I got to
how many rooms?
There were like 7 rooms, and even Enraged did their second record there. They were booked somewhere else. They went. They started fighting, and they're like, "Let's go back to Cole and rent 2 rooms and make one the control room." And then
perfect.
And that's what they they brought in a BCM 10 and an 827. And
is that when you're sort of your gear hoarding? Is it wrong to call you a gear hoarder? It's a good thing.
No, I've always been.
Yeah.
I'm an everything hoarder.
Is that when you started getting collecting gear, or did you already have some?
I mean, I started,
well, there was gear
in high school. I start with my Fostex, and you move on, and then I get the 388, and then you move on, and you keep going and adding. 57. Oh, I need something with Bonamassa. Let's get a 421. Let's, and it just keeps going and going.
Wasn't there like an 8-track Fostex recorder, or was that Tascam?
Tascam.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure Fostex had an 8-track.
I think I had one of those, and I ended up using it as a preamp for a stereo.
Yeah, no, but I had the Tascam 388, the quarter inch with the
Should we dive into formats that are no longer around that we never liked to begin with?
Well,
like ADATs, which we thought sucked from the get-go.
But this is the funny thing. aside, well, because we thought ADAT sounds so much better than that. At the time, we're like, oh, ADAT sounds so much better than this quarter-inch 8-track thing. And now everyone's like, oh, quarter-inch 8-track, let's get one of these. It's analog. Analog sounds so much better. It's like no, it's either 7.5 IPs or 3 1/4 IPs of like 8 tracks on a little quarter-inch head. That doesn't sound good. I don't think you know what analog's supposed to sound like.
Somebody had in my, and I wish I could remember who. And remember 8-track tapes?
Yes.
Right? Somebody had an 8-track tape recorder, but it was cartridges like that. Like it wasn't a reel-to-reel. It was like an actual blank cartridge. And I was like, what?
Well, Tascam.
Was that what the ADAT?
Tascam even made an 8-track cassette, which sounded and
I remember those.
And I remember this guy trying to convince me that it sounded as good as a Studer, and
crackhead.
I
no,
was like,
not true. Sorry to call that person a crackhead. But so what was the other one? There was the Fairlight. There was the Gen X. There was regular DATs. That was
regular DATs, but
the
Fairlight, and then you had Dash early on.
Oh,
and
right,
all those
yeah.
things.
It was interesting because probably, maybe at cello. I'm sitting in East West Studio 3 right now, which used to be Western Recorder Studio 3, which was Cello Studios 3. I can't seem to get out of the building. I've been trapped here. But I was...
It's the Pet Sounds room.
Yeah, it is the Pet Sounds room. So lucky. I wish I could sing. But I remembered that as a young manager early on in like the late 80s, early 90s, the labels were like, we're putting everything on digital format. We're putting everything on 8 hours. And then it was like, oh, we don't know how long these drives will last or how long these digital formats will last. We're putting everything back to 2-inch tape. So then it was the double reels, the big 5,000 foot reels of 2-inch.
Yep.
I made a lot of money re-recording, archiving back to analog. So,
and then they took all that and put it on a DSD.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, sad, but true. Okay, so you got Cole, and did you have an active band then? Were you doing it all? Were you engineering?
I was playing with different people. No, I wasn't. I wasn't engineering yet. But here was the incredible thing. So, 1992. Everybody has a record deal. I mean, everybody has a record deal.
Yeah, things had now come back up.
Except for me.
Things had now come back up.
Everybody had a record deal. And I had made some very close friends with a number of people. And so what I would do is I would just go and hang out at studio watching people work, and I just kind of sit in the corner and I'd make friends with the engineer or the assistant and get to, and it's funny because that's how I met Lawrence.
Oh.
I was
at Grindr?
Yes, because I was working with 11.
Lawrence is the chief engineer here at East West.
Lawrence was the assistant engineer on record with the band that I was working with called 11. And I would hang out, and Lawrence and I became buddies, and that's just what I would do. I would just sit and take notes and just start filing things away so that, eventually when my day would come that I would get
that Lawrence would be sick.
Yeah, the Lawrence would, no, just that when I would get a chance to do this, I would just see like, oh, that's how that works. That's how that works. I mean, I remember even when I got out of high school, in Chicago, I couldn't get a job, or they didn't want to let a summer intern work at any of the recording studios, so I couldn't.
Dude, you had some great ones there. You had Chicago Recording Company.
You had Streeterville. You had Universal.
And Bill Putnam, who designed these rooms, originally came from Chicago.
Yeah, and Universal, which was the Chicago version of all this, was literally 1 block away from my home.
But you never got to work there?
No, and well, I got to go in there, but there was Paragon, there were things like that.
I remember that.
So what happened was I was able to get an internship at an ad agency, and they attached me to a producer, and I would get to go
to do jingles
and do jingle sessions with him, and I'd watch how they would tape edit dialogue and do various things like that.
I wish I was doing more jingle sessions now, but I think the pacing and the timing and the flow of those sessions is such good training.
That as an engineer, I cut my teeth on jingle sessions.
Really?
And
it's super fast paced.
So you have 5 minutes to get drum sound.
Oh yeah.
It's this and that, and it has to be, and
it's almost like live sound, but you got to get your shit together quick.
And because you have union session musicians coming in, and so they're probably being paid double scale because you're not getting in like just slugs on that type
Remember
of thing.
Cheyette Day and Daly and Associates,
all
those big
Young
companies.
and Rubicam is where I was
big
where I
companies
got
out of Chicago.
Yeah, it was where I got my internship, and so a lot of my early engineering stuff was doing jingle stuff, which is
best training.
It is. It's phenomenal. And you learn the speed. And so when you start making records and you start hanging out and you see certain engineers who will go unnamed who
take 20 hours to get a drum sound.
no joke.
Yeah. But as a studio manager, I love it when people take 3 days to get drum sounds.
I know that, but let's be honest.
But it sucks the air out.
It's not only sucks the air out of the room. It's just assholes running up their tab.
Yeah.
I find it to be a very selfish thing because it just sucks the.
Well, there you go, thinking about the musicians.
It sucks
again.
the creativity out of the musician. It's about the guy on the other side of the glass and making sure that they're in a good thing. And I've preached this for years and years, and I've probably said this on every single podcast I've ever done. I call it the Al Green rule. Terrible sounding records on a fidelity basis. It's like there's no high end.
Okay.
There's tons of distortion.
But he's Al Green.
Because what matters? No one notices how terrible the sound. No one's ever listened and gone, this sounds terrible. You go, oh my God, this song is great.
Great.
This performance is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's musical, and you don't sit there and go like, where's the top end?
Right. You don't nerd out on that.
This vocal sounds really muddy and distorted. You don't notice any of that. No. Except for maybe an engineer notices.
Well, and the emotion of the performance.
But that's the thing. It's the performance, and that's what people notice. And so when I see an engineer or producer, I mean, I've had a very famous producer bring in different brushes to hear like what the drummer would sound like. Okay, and even go like, I'm going to imitate that producer, and people know it's about, try going in the other direction, Like, this has nothing to do.
Let the drummer do his thing, man.
But it has nothing to do with what people are going to connect with. People are going to connect with the performance.
You just hit a nail on the head, and I've mentioned this a few times. Earlier I said, hire a producer. One of the reasons you hire the producer, besides keeping an eye on your budget and protecting you and defending you and shielding you from the record company.
Hire the right producer.
Is absolutely. But hire a producer who's actually a fan, who will elicit performance, who will get you to give your best as an artist. Because that's a Rick Rubin thing right there.
You just made me think of Rick. Just made me think when he's engaged.
Oh yeah. He's the ultimate person to make the artist feel calm and comfortable and excited or whatever to elicit that performance.
He's like when because I will just say not everyone can be engaged all the time.
True. But
when he is, he's fucking Yoda.
Oh, dude, it's crazy. Yeah, it's I've witnessed it firsthand many times, and I think there's. I have had the good fortune, as have you, to work with some incredibly talented people in our course of our careers. And there's no one way to get the right performance. But, I like a lot of producers were engineers. They were wonderful. They're great. Mike Klink, case in point. Then there was the round of the drummer producers. Keith Forsey, Bob Rock was a singer. You know what I mean? So someone that has a musical background doesn't hurt, or that was a musician doesn't hurt, but there's plenty of producers that were not musicians that are freaking amazing.
Or they're, marginal musicians.
Right. And they gave up being musicians and to follow what they believe to be their real true calling, which is good for us.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons.
Like, I don't know if Don Smith was an engineer, but he was fucking an amazing engineer. I mean, I don't know if he was a musician,
right?
But he was an amazing engineer,
right.
dude.
So, and Clear Mountain's bass player, and
oh, that makes sense. Actually,
so there was a point at which I wanted to also be a musician and like a Todd Rundgren type.
Oh God, one of my favorites.
But maybe a better engineer. sorry, Todd.
Not as good a guitar player though.
It's true. No, he's
fucking.
He's
Todd
so,
is God, dude.
He's so next level.
Dude, listen to Initiation.
I'm not going to take anything away from him except that sometimes his shit is a little brittle. But
he's also in good shape, actually.
But he. But that being said, I had wound up having so many bad experiences with bands. And
you're at Cole, so that's.
And but being in bands, like I wound up, in particular with lead singers, and I'm like, you know what?
You gotta have them though.
I gotta. For me, the recording studio is a musical instrument.
Agreed.
And
the room in particular.
But everything. It's all part of the musical process.
That's true.
And I am able to get off on making a recording and making a record, and in some ways, I prefer listening to a record to live music in certain instances.
I can see that.
And I get to be even if I'm not playing, I have musical input as an engineer. I certainly have it as a producer, but even as an engineer, because I am helping dictate how this, what the
how
sound
it's going to be
is,
captured,
and how it's going to fit together, and I'm certainly using musical sensibilities in terms of how is this going to all fit into one little picture.
Right. Well, that brings me to, so you're at Cole, but that brings me to the question, can you be a great mixer if you're not a good tracking engineer? I happen to think will be a better mixer if you knew how to track to begin with. That's just my humble opinion. There's a lot of mixers out there would probably say, no, that's not necessary, but that's what I don't know. Will we ever know?
I will tell you this. I think I was immediately a very good tracking engineer.
Yeah.
I think mixing took longer for me to...
I can see that.
To get to a place. I think I never started off as a bad mixing engineer. I think it was
okay.
You can put this out, and it's particularly in the 90s because there was...
easier to mix what you yourself tracked.
Yeah. But particularly in the 90s, there was still a lot of organic sounding stuff. There weren't a lot of overhyped. Not everything had the overhyped snare and kick drum.
Yeah.
And there was just a lot of the Americana and independent music that you could do stuff that was like you could get.
I'm a huge REM fan.
You could get away.
Bands like that.
Yeah, but even they got into like the Scott Lit and stuff like that. It still sounded like a pop record in term. So there was a lot of stuff that was not really pop. That like a lot of stuff that Jim Scott was doing.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't using samples.
Dude, wasn't he doing stuff like the Muffs though? Wasn't it like L7 and wasn't it like kind of punk stuff?
But all kinds of things. But I'm saying there was
petty.
There was an organic approach to a lot of stuff, and you could get away with that, and not everything had to sound like an A level snare. You could get away with a B level snare, and people wouldn't. People would still buy the record.
Well, we're back to, is the song eliciting emotion, and is the song reaching people? Or are people going to be like, oh, that's snare?
Well, but on top of it, too, though, sampling technology was, when working in analog, it was very difficult.
Yeah.
There was a whole thing to it, and the guys who were really good at it, like the Clear Mountains, had very elaborate systems set up in order to be able to use samples in their mixing, Bill Bottrell, things like that.
God, one of the finest engineers I've ever known.
And it was not... it was not easy do that. And we would, and I remember, we were doing, and when you had to do things
until
like
East
that,
West Sounds came along.
right?
There we go.
But we didn't have the computers to do it, and not everyone had a Wendell, and there were things that we'd do things
Well,
like,
the early ones
put a speaker on top of a snare and mic the bottom of the
Oh, yeah.
snare. Put an oratone where
Oh, yeah.
where the beater
With
would
the-
be
with
on
a tissue.
No, but put the oratone where the beater would be on the bass drum.
Oh, okay.
And gate that.
Yeah.
So like things like that.
And different effects and things like that. What was the thing that John Porter did on How Soon Is Now with the Smiths? I think he laid the guitar on top of the amp. It was feedback or something. It was some kind of crazy loop thing.
No, it was
Wah, 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 wah,
yeah,
wah.
they kept sort of punching the tremolo on the
Right,
amp
right,
to
right,
try
right.
to that is
That was cool.
I keep
Super cool.
I keep trying to explain to people at the time when that came out how
I love that.
earth-shattering that record
I love
was.
those records.
Like that for me was like as earth-shattering as something like Donna Summer House I Feel Love, how that blew everybody's mind at the time.
My brother Steve worked on all those Donna Summer records with Jürgen Koppers and all that, the crew from was it Casanova? What was the label? Giorgio Moroder's Casablanca, Giorgio Moroder's label. But John Porter, who we just mentioned, who produced the Smiths, he's the reason that I'm in this building.
No kidding.
Yeah, he's the one who got me my job at cello. I had worked with him at Red Zone, and he did all these. He'd just come out, finished doing 3 Strange Days with School of Fish.
Right.
Remember that band? Great band, great song.
A cold band.
Oh yeah, one of your bands. There you go. And so he did a lot of blues records. He is a blues aficionado and an incredible guitar player, but he played bass in Roxy Music, and then he started producing, and he was doing Otis Rush and Taj Mahal and Buddy Guy, all these great people that I got to meet. And I was at Red Zone, and then I left Red Zone, and I went to Soundcastle. When I was at Soundcastle, John called me, and he was doing a Taj record down in New Orleans, and he goes, I just met this guy, and he's an audiophile, and his name is Rick Adams, and he has this company called Cello, and he wants to buy a studio, and we're thinking about buying Sound City. I was like, oh, that'd be cool. And he goes, we're gonna have a record company, and I don't know where your place will be, but do you want to work with me? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. And he called me back, and he goes, we're gonna buy 6,000 Sunset.
Wow.
And I was like, and I knew as a young manager, I had never been in here. I had a brother that worked at Design Effects. I'd ride in the van with him to go to studios sometimes. My brother Rick, who's a great engineer and great guitar player, but I had never really been in the building. And so Soundcastle was, those were Bowtone rooms or Vincent Van Hoff rooms, and they were more sort of modern, 70s rooms that had isolation, et cetera, and fine sounding rooms. The old Kendon rooms had the whole, Tom Hidley, Glenn Phoenix, Kent Duncan, that was the drop ceiling, that whole Sierra Audio thing. So like Westlake has, so that was that exposure. And I'd never been into a studio like this. I don't think I'd ever been to Capitol at that point. And I came in, and I remember the first day that I came in, it was around Christmas of 1998, and the Stones were here. And I walked into Studio One, and I was like, well, first of all, it is giant. And I was like, oh, there's tile. I'm used to wood. Okay, that's interesting. Oh, there's no isolation. That's crazy. Wow, that tape machine over there, it looks like a fucking freezer. Oh, it's an ATR.
124.
Yeah, it's an ATR 124. And I was like, that looks crazy. And I remember just thinking, like, how does this all work? Why does it sound so good in here?
Yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all fine. Nothing is fucked here. It's all fine.
But it's fun,
But it freaked me out.
Outside of the rooms, it was a funky building.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Dude,
it was
the carpet was funky. It was very, very 70s, very, we're sitting in Studio 3, and I had to say the little white squares look pretty clean. But this room is exactly the same as it was when it was built. The console's different. But really, literally, the carpet on the wall, it's the same. The tile.
and it's a shame that you can't get asbestos tile anymore because
it's a thing.
It's a thing.
Dude, I don't know if it's the foam backing underneath the tile. I don't know what it is. But yeah, you can see some pretty deep grooves in this floor.
Yeah, it has...
It's got a thing.
Yeah.
I know. It's crazy. Well, and the diffusers and the way this wall is, Bill is crazy good.
Yeah,
Just crazy,
because
crazy.
this is except you guys can't see this.
Yeah.
This is not a wide room.
Oh, it's tiny.
And these walls are parallel. But he somehow managed to avoid.
Or almost. I think there's a slant.
Well, it's not enough. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a slant in the ceiling.
Yeah, it shouldn't work, but it does.
But it's.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I've cut every instrument, like literally every instrument in this room.
In this room, right?
I mean, I've had, even, but from like drums and rock stuff to like some weird 18-piece type of thing with vibraphone and accordion and strings.
Tomorrow, Chris Cody's coming in, and he's got a quartet happening in here, and maybe some other stuff that he's doing with the engineer is I forget his name, Dave Ptolemy is the engineer's name. Look forward to meeting him. But I was going to say that, yeah, we're in agreement. And then Wally Hyder and the people that worked here when it was Western, they tried to recreate this room in particular at Hyder's.
Is
and
that okay?
Yeah.
Now it makes sense what they were doing.
They tried to replicate 3, and Bill, I think I don't know, but I think he was fine with it. I think he was like, yeah, this is what I did, and if you can do it, go for it. Yeah. But it never really was the same.
Yeah, but Hyder rooms have.
They were cool.
There were that wasn't the Sage and Sound too. Wasn't that like a Wally? It was a Wally type room.
It was a Wally type room in the B room over there. But I don't know who designed those rooms. Those rooms are gone now.
But I know. But you walk in there and you just think
that
about
was also 1960s.
This is a Wally vibe.
Yeah, it was 1960s. So Bill may have had a hand in the beginning there, but it kind of ended up becoming almost like a jazz place at that point. And I don't know if RCA had a hand in it back then. But anyway. The history of recording studios in LA alone, it could make a career. I mean, I could dig down that rabbit hole.
And we've lost so many of them. We haven't lost as many as New York has, sadly.
And it all comes down in my small brain that it's real estate.
It is real estate.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully, thank God to Doug Rogers. Give a shout out to Doug because he saved us. He saved cello. East West is now, what we call it now. It's East West. But we're making records every day. I feel super lucky. Yeah, like we're curators of a working museum, basically.
And if you do what we do, this is Disneyland.
Oh yeah.
If you come here, I mean, like there's
it's
other
the happiest
rooms,
place on earth.
But it's just like, oh my God, this.
Is it a relief
I love
for
this
you?
console. I love this console. I love this room. And like room 2, you have to work so hard
to mess up drums in there.
I bet I've gotten tracks where someone messed up drums in there. I'm like, wow, you really suck at recording because how can you fuck up drums in room 2?
Chris Seafried is producing a band, and they're this podcast won't be out for many months, so I'm not blowing anything by mentioning this. I don't think the band's called Lady Blackbird, and this probably won't air for another 6 months because I have others that are ahead of you. But and yesterday I saw him in the kitchen, and he was a drummer, and I said, "Oh, you're or Tamir I think was playing drums," and I go, "So you're doing drums today?" And he goes, "I know, I look like a genius." He goes, "I just feel like a genius." He goes, "It's so easy to do." So I'm lucky that I get to run a place that sells itself, sounds good.
Well, let me talk about that. Let me tell you why, for me, that room is magic.
Yeah.
I think
it's a little bigger than this room.
It is. So here's something that, after recording for many years, that I didn't notice originally early in my career. I will notice the space around a kit when I'm recording and go, this is the wrong. Like whatever reflection is going there, it's like this is not the right sound for this track. There's something, whatever that space I can perceive, because you're always going to hear some type of reflection unless it's a completely dead room.
Right.
And certain rooms sound appropriate for certain music. That room sounds appropriate for every style of music.
Dude,
I don't
this
know.
room too creaks me out. Like it'll be jazz or
right, but
hip-hop.
I don't hear this room this is a deader room.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't hear this room as much as I can hear room 2 when I'm when I'm recording drums. There is a space around it, and there has never been a style of music I've heard in that room where I'm like, it's not quite right. And somebody said it's like the Fibonacci sequence. It's just like no matter what it is, no matter what style of music you're doing in that room, it is the appropriate space for that. And I've heard a number of recordings where I've just sound like, like
Something's not right.
Something's off. It's really weird, and it's weird how like I'll listen to a couple of my early recordings and go like, oh, I should have put some gobos around the kit or something.
Back to the room is instrument, and back to the room being an essential part of the tools that let you, besides the outboard gear console, etc. Back to the acoustic space, lending its magic to what you're doing. Yeah. That when people wonder if you listen to this podcast or any pro audio podcast and you think, oh, I can make a great record in my bathroom. Well, yeah, if you're good, you can make a good record anywhere, right? Let's hope so. But what the acoustic space will lend to the sound and lend to the capture of that sound is going to make it better. Yeah. If it's a good room, it's going to make it better.
Yeah. I mean, it's like...
And if it's a good engineer, he's going to use the room to make it better.
Right. I mean...
Yeah. What about Cole?
That was the thing.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why people loved Cole as a rehearsal room was they were dead. Like we had burlap on the wall, like carpet, burlap on the walls, and
sucking up all the reflection,
sucking up everything. Yeah. And what that meant was you could hear everything coming out of every amplifier and out of the monitors. And it's funny. I remember the first time I heard it was the second Rage record that they, Evil Empire. The first time I actually heard it,
greatest rhythm section on the planet.
It had just
one of them.
Yeah, it had just come out, and I'm up in it's what I do. I'm up in Whistler snowboarding in a half pipe doing this like summer.
He has a boot on right now.
That's not from snowboarding. So it's the summer. We're snowboarding in the Horseman Glacier. We have this big PA set up, and someone plays the record, and I can hear it on the middle of the Horseman Glacier on the half pipe. I'm like, that sounds like Room C. I know what that room sounds like. That sounds like Room C,
would that
right?
be?
But it's the thing. And Dead is sometimes your friend. Like all that stuff that came out of
Dead is your friend. Yeah.
All the stuff that came out of Strawberry Studios that 10cc owned. They had shag carpeting on the walls to kill and all those drum sounds are very dead. Listen to Pink Floyd records. Drums on every Pink Floyd record are absolutely dead. There is no reverb. There is no room sound. They are just and that was
that's how you could hear Gilmore play.
Yeah.
He's like one of my other favorite guitar players besides Todd.
And so if there is a problematic room, you need to know that there is like, hey, there's a node going on here or some standing wave or something that is
try to work with the idiosyncrasy,
distracting.
I guess.
Like, so if you're in a room that's weird, the best thing to do is cut everything down. I build a tent around it, do whatever you have to do.
Hence doghouses, gobos, etc.
Yes, yeah. And you look at if you go back and you watch the Godard Sympathy for the Devil movie, when they're in Olympic, they're in that huge room recording. They have like a doghouse built around Charlie's kit.
Dude, what a cool studio.
Never worked there.
Another one.
Another one that's gone.
I had another one that's gone, but it was random. I went to England, and I rarely want to go to other studios when I'm on vacation. But when I was in England, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to SARM. I'm going to go to Metropolis. I'm going to go to Olympic. I'm going to go to Abbey Road. I'm glad I did, because SARM.
Did you go to Trident?
I didn't, which is insane because I'm sitting in Studio 3 where we have a Trident A range. And
I'll say that I don't know if he remembers it.
Do you know Adam Mosley?
I don't know if Doug remembers this, but I talked him into getting a Trident.
Good. He probably would acknowledge it.
I said because I was visiting while they were doing the Fab Four thing.
Oh yeah.
And they were trying to figure. I was like,
and this was it. This was in Massachusetts. This console, Longview Farms. Is that the name of the studio? I think that's where it came from. And Gary Meyerberg, who was then the chief engineer, went out, got it, and brought it back. And Lawrence. God bless him. Lawrence has taken it to new heights of restoration.
These are not easy consoles to maintain with a lot of unobtainium parts.
I like unobtainium. But then at the same time, some of it's very simple electronics.
It is. It is. But it's always like connectors, transformers, switches, faders, things like that. Did they make this part anymore? No.
Yeah, like, and it's kind of like the asbestos tile. Like you can't have lead anymore, right? So you can't have this kind of solder anymore, and you can't have this anymore, and you can't have that anymore, and it's like, fucking
You
please.
can buy so much lead solder on eBay. Got to tell you.
Oh,
that.
good. Well,
yeah,
that's good. We're gonna go get some today. We're gonna go buy some lead solder. So you're at Cole, getting into it, right? Did you start? Obviously, you're leasing out the rooms, and that's part of it. But were you including yourself as an engineer on sessions for rehearsal?
Well, yeah. I mean, you're going in, you're setting up.
Well, you're meeting everybody.
But you're setting up. You're getting the sound. You know, you're basically you're basically a monitor mixer.
Yeah.
So you're going in, and then in the showcase room, you're mixing for.
Then you're meeting A&R people too.
Yeah, and they're just coming by and hanging out, and because it was, here's the beauty of Cole. Cole became a hangout spot. People would come there.
I wish I had gone there more.
People had come there when they weren't, like musicians would come by when they weren't recording.
Yeah.
I mean, weren't rehearsing, just to hang out, to play pool, to visit their friends.
Yeah. The camaraderie.
And that was the thing. It was like that pool table created a community.
Yeah.
And that was funny. I think we got into that was STP's old pool table, and we got it from them.
Nice.
And it just became a thing, and people would just go, well, I don't know, I'm not doing anything. Let's go visit. Let's go see who's hanging out at Cole, and they'd come over, and everybody came through there.
And obviously rehearsal, even though it could be, I'm sure there were times when things were tense between bands, obviously, but rehearsal wouldn't be as crucial as hanging out on a session if there's paid session players or paid union players. It's not as easy because it's on the clock, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you're on the clock at a rehearsal studio, but it's not the same kind of thing.
And we took the piss out of everybody. We didn't care who you were. Like our Rage Against the Machine. Like we had some very salty guys with real credentials working for me, and at the time, because they had just gotten dropped from their label or whatever, like these guys who had been in like very well-known bands, and they're just taking it. Like we had changed our Rage Against the Machine sign poster to say Rage Against the Snack Machine, and our Danzig poster it was the
Dude, I love him.
It was the early.
He works in this room all the time.
But it was the early album where it's kind of like the first Doors record where you just see the faces, and then suddenly one day Morrissey is in and you just could, and they never noticed, and
Dude, yeah, that's the fun part.
And then we changed one of the road cases to stay Steely Danzig.
I'm a prankster, but there's the current generation doesn't necessarily appreciate our prankster attitude. But so that's what's happening.
Feelings. They need to know feelings are not facts.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, I mean, if either of us has an emotional disorder, I would be the empath, and he would be the non-empath. But at that same time, I have a salty, dry sense of humor, and if you take yourself that seriously, I don't really want to hang out with you anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, come on, let's all this, back to the everything we're doing is important, but no one's gonna die. You know what I mean? Like that would be the thing that sometimes when I first started out, I would be like, oh my God, people would be losing their minds, and I'd be like, we're not in an emergency room, okay? You're trying to play guitar.
Yeah,
take your head out of your butt and play your instrument.
Steve Lillywhite told me a story that I told him how I had a Freeman symphonizer, which was one of the very early string emulators.
Okay.
And he told me this story how they were doing a session. I don't know, it was like Engelbert or something, and he was the tape op. And they were trying to get the strings out before, time.
Yeah.
And they get the thing, they send the strings out, everyone leaves, and they go, okay, let's hear it. Didn't hit record.
Oh, fuck me. And he was the tape op?
He was the tape op. And he didn't get fired. Nobody died. The song, they put the Freeman symphonizer on it. The song still came out. And Steve, I hope if you watch this, I hope I'm telling the story right.
Yeah,
but it was like, it's like, all right, nobody died, because I have been with certain producers who think they're, they think they're doing a fucking heart transplant.
That's also cocaine was influencing a lot of grumpy producers.
Cocaine and just overblown egos.
Yeah,
So just
for sure.
People people got to stay right sized.
Yeah. I mean,
Even the rock stars got to stay right sized. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, and most of them, and I think you'd agree with this, most of the really, really good musicians that we've had the good fortune of working with, they are self-deprecating.
Yeah.
They'll take the piss out of their own selves.
And here's the thing. Look, we all
Want the best.
We don't want to be disrespected, and we will all take umbrage to being disrespected.
Absolutely.
And
we don't want to do shit work.
but we don't, like somebody disrespected me this week, and I let them know, like, hey, you're an asshole, and that was, and it's just like, you're gonna impugn my.
Was that like man stuff?
Yeah, it was but it was just like it was just somebody basically. Impugn my professional acumen, and it's like, hey, this is something I pride myself on.
Yeah, that's not cool.
So if you're gonna say that, I'm definitely gonna.
Yeah, fuck you.
Fuck you. But otherwise, I really don't take myself that seriously. I don't. Yeah. I make a point of surrounding myself with people who are better, more talented, more smarter than I am,
I've never
and things
found
like
you
that.
to not be grateful.
But I keep myself right sized by making sure that I'm around people that I go like, oh,
yeah,
that's the guy. That's the guy right there.
Yeah.
And
people will ask me often, like, and a lot of the young kids that work here, they'll be like, oh, they get all excited, like, oh, Sean Hurley's amazing. Oh, and if you're both listening to this, you're going to be happy by my comparison. He's like, oh, he's better than Pino Palladino. I'm like, okay, well, that's ridiculous. They're both amazing, and Pino Palladino's sickly amazing, and also both Sean and Pino are very humble very self-deprecating.
That's like saying peanut butter is better than jelly.
Yeah, it makes no sense. But favorite session players for you as an engineer, working with like the project that you just finished for Mike Finnegan, that whole project, rest in peace. Dude, no flies on Mike ever. No. What a ridiculously talented musician, but a self-deprecating guy.
Yeah. And here's something I'm going to say too. This is like
ridiculous musician.
As much as
in a good way.
People need to come up and get a job as, in their 20s and 30s, whatever. We have rare opportunities to hire the Don Randys, James Gadsons, the Jerry Jamots, who we are still blessed to have these people around.
That's one of the reasons I'm doing this.
Who are still killing it,
dude,
and bring so much to a session. And why I love working with session players is. They're coming in with ideas. It's just like, I just don't want to hear their chops. I want to hear their ideas.
Of course. Dude, I think that we should live at the Baked Potato. This is my new theory. So I went to the Baked Potato last Friday. There was an event happening here at East West for FOCAL. Wonderful people, wonderful company, fine speakers. And I felt a little guilty for not attending my own event. But they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm going to see Michael Landau at the Baked Potato. And it was so good.
He's the GOAT. He's the GOAT.
Dude,
when it comes to session players, he's the GOAT.
Dude. And I think there was an interview where Steve Lukather, someone was interviewing Steve, and they said, how does it feel to be the greatest guitar player in the world? He goes, I don't know. Talk to Michael Landau. But there's Tim Pierce. There's, so many great players. Back to Todd as God.
Yeah.
So many great musicians, session players. And those of you who don't do what we do and you are the record buying public, God bless you, you're benefiting from these people's life of dedication. My God.
But let's talk about what a session player can do. So and I believe this is in the Wrecking Crew documentary. Sonny and Cher, The Beat Goes On.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Carol Kay brought in the doom, 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 doom,
so
doom,
amazing.
doom, doom, doom. It was just, the chart was just like, play the one. She brought the lick in. The lick is what makes that song. And there's so many songs that I can point to throughout history where it's like, why can't I think of the name of the Motown guitar player who came up with the? I'm embarrassed that I can't.
We'll figure it out.
But on My Girl. That guitar lick is what transforms the song into something else. that doom boo doom boo doo doom doom boo doom
Yeah.
like that, and that was actually, and because
Somebody look that up and tell us who that is.
because I am fortunate enough to get to work with Smokey Robinson. He's like
Dude,
yeah, he's like, that wasn't there. He goes, he played that as a joke, and I was like, that's the
That's
lick.
what happens. But that's what happens. Well, the happy, quote unquote, happy accidents happen because these people are so fucking good. They're like, you know what would be cool here?
But sometimes,
and thank God for the producer that didn't say no.
right? But sometimes it's the shitty playing that's the thing.
Yeah.
Rolling Stone Rocks Off. That opening lick was a mistake.
Oh yeah.
That was a mistake. That was
Yeah.
Keith not being a good player.
Yeah.
He made that mistake. And it's like, oh, that wrong note is brilliant.
He's actually one of my favorite guitar players. Someone was saying something the other day. They were like, oh, you know, or someone said something really lame the other day where they said Ringo was a terrible drummer.
No. Well, when I say not being a guitar player, I'm saying he's not a Michael Landau.
Oh no, I know what you're saying.
Technically
speaking,
yes. Yeah. I can't get through a song without my Keith influence being a huge part of that. But he was not a technician.
Yeah.
You know, but my God,
a feel guy.
A feel and an ear.
Oh yeah.
You know,
dude, other favorite guitar player where we're shouting out, Mike Campbell.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap.
I know. And speaking of which, I recently produced a song and Ben Mont came and played on it.
So
and this is one of those things, again, there are some people, and this is what the best session players do, they give you the earworm. What's the little thing that's missing? Oh, that little piece of ear candy that they added. Now the song has gone from here to here because of this little.
And if you're listening to this and you're a young musician and you're trying to figure out, like, how do I become a session musician? Well, first of all, just keep practicing.
Yeah.
And get your friends. Find people that will record you on their projects.
Yeah.
And get your name on the back of some CDs. Get some credits.
It's. Pardon me for what I like to say is don't play your instrument, play the song.
Yes.
You know? Don't play for pussy is what we tell guys when we're on stage. It's like you're playing way too many notes, but I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing anything that adds to the song.
Okay, so this is where I'll get in trouble too. My husband's a great guitar player.
Yes.
But I'll get in trouble because I know that Yngwie Malmsteen is a great guitar player.
Yes.
Do I want to sit and watch Yngwie play? Probably not. It's too many notes for me. Okay, Satriani, incredible player. Sometimes too many notes for me. You know, sometimes when it suits the song, then it's cool. Then I like it. But if I'm sitting there, I could fall asleep if they're dweedling out.
Yeah, but if you look at the fact that, let's go to Satriani.
And they're also really fucking good.
But Satriani knew how to play behind Mick Jagger.
True.
So before he was Joe Satriani,
that's true.
You know, he was Mick Jagger's background guitar player.
Right. Yeah.
And so you got to know
it's me. It's a failing in me, obviously.
No, but I'm saying it's like you got to know how to. The thing is that his audience wants to hear.
The hang back.
And it's so funny. It's because Joe Bonamassa is a close
friend
of mine.
Yeah, but see, he doesn't do that to me.
But he's a close friend of mine, and we work together a lot. And he's been labeled as this one type of thing. And I'm like, he can do so much more than that. His audience wants to hear that thing.
Right.
And so, and so when Satriani or Steve Vai or any of these people are doing, it's like they've gone like, oh, I have an audience. I'm going to entertain these people by playing this style. But, you could ask Steve Vai to do this and he will do that. You can ask Satriani, you can ask Joe to do this. They will all do, Lukather built a career playing really simple things that just worked in the song. He didn't make a career by shredding.
Right.
Right. And that's why he is one of the most recorded guitar players of the 80s and 90s.
Again, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about play to the song.
Yeah.
Right. And those people, if anybody ever hears this, don't think for a second that I don't madly respect Satriani and Yngwie. I
exactly.
do. It's just it might not be the thing I go to. But like when Joe did the Black Country Communion stuff, dude, let's just talk about bass player Glenn Hughes.
Yeah.
Holy crap. And what a great singer.
Yeah.
I never listened to a lot of Deep Purple when I was younger. It wasn't a thing for me. But now I've been going back and I'm like,
well, those are big.
Boom!
Those are if you're like replacing someone like Ian Gillan and you're bringing it.
Oh yeah. Oh dude, and other favorite, fucking Phil. Is it Lynott or Lynott? Thin Lizzy.
Lynott.
Yeah, Phil Lynott. Thin Lizzy. Boom, done.
Yeah.
Killer.
Yeah.
You know, and who was the guitar player? Was it Scotty Moore, Gary Moore, all the Moores?
There were a number of they had several
Different guitar players. But
Gary Moore was one of them.
So this is our good fortune. You're at Cole. You're meeting all these people. You're ingratiating yourself naturally, just hanging out, doing your thing. So when did you first get to start recording? Like what was the first gig you did? What was the first session you recorded as a first engineer?
It was coincidentally for Michael Landau.
Oh, cool.
Because here's my story. So I've got Cole for a couple years.
Yeah.
Real estate was super cheap in '94. Big crash.
Yeah.
I was able to.
Is this post earthquake?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I was able to find a house for like nothing, because Hollywood was a crack drive-through.
Yeah.
And build a studio, and I had
Was this the house in Beechwood?
Yeah, and this was my plan. I still have a good friend named Alan Hirschberg, who was a regular engineer.
I know.
Who was kind of like one of the main Yo Cat guys, and he was partners with David Garfield and was working with all those guys all the time, Lukather, Landau, etc. And I said, how about I build a studio? Let's brainstorm on what needs to go in there so we can bring people in, and I trained under him.
Wow.
So it was.
I know him.
I'm the owner / assistant, and I'm learning under him.
Oh, humility is a great teacher.
And I'm like getting yelled at by certain musicians because when I went and picked up their food, I didn't make sure the bacon was on the hamburger and things like that. I'm like, you're in my fucking house. Okay, I'll go get that. Because that was the path that I had to pave, but the blessing was I wasn't just a homegrown guy. I was a homegrown guy getting schooled by real pros.
Yeah.
And
working with real musicians.
Yeah, and then the first time I got to first was, I think Mike needed to come in and do overdubs for a Vonda Shepherd record or something like that, and that was the first time that I was driving the train.
What did you?
What
Mike did you? What guitar did he have, and what was he playing the other night? It was a Strat, I think. But what did you?
I don't even remember what we did. I mean, we were probably.
Is there a go-to guitar amp, Mike, for you? No.
Now?
Depends on the guitar.
Now?
Yeah.
It's either a 67 or a 409.
I don't normally talk gear, by the way.
Yeah. It's either a 67, like a foot off, or a 409.
Nice.
We got in the 90s, we started doing the whole multi-mic weirdness thing, and I have gotten...
I say less is more.
Well, here's... Also in the 90s when, it was JCM 800s and the Mesa Boogie dual rectum fryer. And what happened was everyone in grunge, and everyone's like, we need the guitar to like fill up all this space, and then next thing we know
I thought a lot of grunge was droning.
We're doing 2-inch 8-track head stacks to try to capture all the low end and all this crap, and as I listened to some of my favorite mixers like Betrayal, Clear Mountain, Andy Wallace, things like that, I go like, wow, this huge guitar sound isn't coming because there's all this bass in the guitar. We're perceiving low end in the guitar because of the bass instrument. And so I don't need to capture all this sub 100 hertz stuff on the guitar itself.
Right.
I need to capture this amount of information, and guess what? Now there's this space in between for the drums and the vocals and all these other things, and I have separation and clarity, and
How can I not know who tracked Soundgarden? I don't.
Well, which record?
The one that has Black Hole Sun on it.
That was produced by Beinhorn.
Oh, okay.
And
who's a genius in his?
Who is? I love him.
Yes.
And
although he did solo a kick drum through a PA in studio
I know.
too.
We've had this talk. We're
And
not going
teased him.
We're not
But
gonna,
he was cool.
I know.
He was cool.
But he's a bona fide genius.
Oh, he is, yeah.
And Brendan O'Brien mixed that record.
Of course. But
And he
tracked it?
I can't remember who tracked it.
Some guy in Seattle.
But
Yeah.
it's under. But I'm friends with Michael.
Yeah.
I have never worked with Michael, but I've had assistants that work with Michael. I've had other friends who work with Michael, and when you're engineering for Michael, you are doing Michael's bidding. So you are you're bringing something.
You're following his madness.
But he's gonna say I want this, and that.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like. It's,
yours is not to question why. Yours is just to do.
But what I'm saying is whoever engineered it, Michael's going to have.
Michael, right,
Michael's, you're using his stuff. You're using his germanium neaves.
Right.
Et cetera, et cetera.
He's always treated me with such respect and kindness. I revere him. Actually. I love his records. So there you go.
I think he's brilliant. I really like him.
Massenburg, brilliant.
Yeah, and
a bunch of brilliant guys.
And Michael's been so kind and generous with his knowledge and wisdom with me.
I think that one thing we'd acknowledge, we've talked about session players, and we've talked about all these things, and I know that JJ feels the same that I do, that you, as an engineer producer, stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before. The guys that did all the mono records in the 60s. And by the way, I keep asking this on the podcast, why does mono sound so fucking good? Is it just me that it's louder, clearer? I can hear everything. Stereo's cool too, but
what's funny?
But I don't need
I prefer
17.1.
Rubber Soul in mono rather than the stereo version.
Dude, I was such a dumbass. I bought that Beatles set, the box set, and I bought it in stereo instead of mono.
I bought both.
Oh, of course you did. But I was like such a dumbass, and I'm like, why didn't I buy some mono? And now you're hard pressed to get an original mono recording because everything's been digitally remastered, everything's been put back in stereo. If you've got a record collection and you've got those mono records, cherish them because they're fucking dude. It's so good.
I was at Clear Mountains and he played this amazing. I'm not going to say what it is, but this one record that everyone knows and loves, and he was doing the Atmos thing, and it was like transcendent.
Yeah.
And I felt like I'm sitting like, I can visualize each member of that group in the room.
People that do Atmos well.
But he did it very well.
Yeah.
And he was doing it better than just about anybody I had heard.
Agreed.
But I asked myself,
is it better than the mono?
Is it as impactful as the shitty stereo?
See, to me, it would be only with picture. Like if I was watching a picture, then and I say this all the time in every part.
And I say this, and this is particularly about rock and roll. I think it's probably better for classical and maybe jazz and a number of things.
Maybe.
But there
I don't want to be on the stage though.
There is certainly
I want audience perspective.
Yeah, but you can do classical and audience perspective, and that's what I thought. That's why I think Bob is doing Atmos so well, is he's giving you audience perspective. He's not,
you're not sitting.
It's not an acid trip.
Yeah.
And that is, but I wondered. It's like there is something about the power of music coming out of two speakers, and going back to why I say sometimes I like records better than live music. There is something about the tightness, what we can do with controlling like compression and EQ and things like that, that makes certain stuff just pump in a way that, like seeing a disco band live is not going to pump the way a disco record is going to pump.
Or funk band either.
Or a funk, and there are aspects about it that are great, but there is just something, the way that we can control the dynamic and aspects of things and make things fit together, that is, I always say you can tell when there's a band playing down the street or someone's playing a record down the street.
Yeah.
You can tell the difference in the sound.
I still want to know. Someone will have to tell me, and I'm sure someone will at some point in time, why mono sounds so good. Maybe
Are you deaf in one ear?
No. That was just about to say. I'm not deaf in one ear. But this room that we're sitting in, what Lou Adler told me was that when the Mamas and the Papas were in here, when I guess he knew John Phillips, and when they first came in, what they were doing was demos, right?
Yeah.
And to get noticed and to get a deal. And Lou Adler was like, I think, and I'm sure he can correct me, but he was like, this is fine. These are good. These are records. This is happening.
Yeah.
This band's going to get signed and we're going to release these records. You know what I mean? I mean, the vocal quality, just everything is just so killer. The songwriting, get out of here.
Yeah.
You know, amazing. So you do the session. I keep trying to reel myself back in. You do the session with Landau. Now you're officially an engineer. You're officially, people are going to hire you because you've got that circle. You've met those people and they trust you.
But what I needed to do then was to have stuff for people to listen to. So I had bands that had either trying to
right, that's a thing.
Get deals, or one band like in fact, the guys I play with every Tuesday, they had made this record with Mike Chapman and
also this room, Mike Chapman
and Tom Wally said, who's their A&R guy's like, no, I'm not hearing that. I need more songs, but you're out of budget. So sorry. And so they come to me and we record, and I'm like, okay, I'll produce you. And I record 6 songs with them, and in situations like that where I just throw myself in the fire.
Did that get them a gig? I mean, were they good?
They were good, but did the record company?
No,
because it was the record company was over them by that point. There was, I think it was personal things. I think there was. I think somebody had annoyed.
When you get
somebody
the deal,
had pissed somebody off.
When you get the deal, just know you need to make friends with more than the A&R guy who signed you, because he's probably going to leave and go elsewhere.
You also have to not annoy the A&R guy. So
don't let him come to the sessions. There's some A&R people who are amazing.
Don't call him. Don't show up. Don't bug him. Things like that. Anyway,
true that. Yeah,
so,
God bless A&R people.
As I understand it.
God bless A&R people.
But things like that, it was good. It did wind up in a soundtrack and stuff like that. And
so now you're building, quote unquote, you're real. You're building your credits.
And I'm doing a lot of commercials. I'm just trying, doing a lot of commercial sessions,
pay the bills, keep lights on.
a lot of jingles, just doing stuff. And then
I do hardly any advertising anymore.
And then
it used to be the backbone of what I did.
And it goes to what I always say: you have to know your shit. Like you have to. You can fake it for so long, but you have to know your shit, because this relationship is built on relationships.
Trust.
But it's
Yeah.
and most
our whole world is
most of my gigs come through relationships.
Yeah.
Unless you're in a different.
Most of my bookings are word of mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why you're one of the
Friend
big
of a friend.
reasons I come here.
Aw.
Unless you're at like a certain strata of reputation where people want you just because you're the hit maker and that's
Right.
what they want. You're going to get jobs through relationships. And I was working with a bunch of never heard ofs, whatever, et cetera, and somebody knew that I was competent and they liked me, and they said, hey,
He's easy to work with.
I've seen, can you come work on this June Carter Cash record, which I wound up as one of the producers, the engineer, the mixer, and we won a Grammy.
I love her.
And and Johnny's on it, and I got to work with and then I
and
got
their son. Did their son
to
play on it?
No, he and I produced it.
Oh, good.
And we just and that was sort of the you just one day you just keep plugging along. You just try to be a good person,
and
not be one of these
yourself.
people, because I've seen so many people who literally said, I will overtake you. Like they come into this thing with a head full of steam. They're like, I'll overtake you old guys. You guys, like, let me show you, what you're up against. And you never hear from them. And it's the people who just put your head down. And,
well, it's natural selection. That's what I call it.
It is. And this is, this is like...
This is what makes a life, though. These are the experiences that make a life.
And people have... I don't want... Look, I don't want to turn this on into a bag session on the younger generation about people not having their feelings hurt or being offended.
Why not?
But
Let's go there. Pussies.
But you gotta. I want to know that you're willing to show up for a certain amount of time for free because I'm giving you a shitload of information. I need to know that you're happy to be here and you will clean a fucking toilet.
Be engaged, yeah.
You're happy to be here. You will clean a fucking toilet because the day is going to come that there are going to be some big swinging dicks around whose egos are out of control, but that's the gig, and you gotta be happy to be there, and that's the fucking gig. Sometimes is you gotta
It's a fine line, and I tell my staff this, and I feel like it's Groundhog Day for me too.
Yeah.
Right. We're like everybody from the age of 18 to 25, and I've been so lucky. We both been lucky, work with great people, but I feel like as a manager, I've been running like this big boy daycare. That's what Paula Salvatore and I used to call it for like so long. And I say the same thing. I'm like, look, there is a way to make the client feel that you are engaged, that you are present, that you are there to help without inserting yourself or overly inserting yourself because it's not about us.
But on
us.
top of it, aside from that, I wish people had the attitude of, first off,
hunger.
The artist is coming from a place where they are being vulnerable with their creativity. They are birthing this baby of their art out there.
Yes.
So you have to be very sensitive to that. Okay.
Big time.
You have to be very sensitive to that, and I can't say I'm always 100% sensitive to that, but I'm trying to be aware of the fact, and that you are lucky to be in that position,
witnessing
witness that, and there are so many people behind you who would kill for this. Yeah. Who, if you, I don't know, if I had,
if you're entitled, if you're not going to get there.
Exactly, and so when someone says like, I'm not gonna intern for free, you got to pay me minimum wage. It's like, well, you know what? I know a lot of fucking people who would do anything.
Well, and neither one of us is an abuser that way.
No.
Like, I follow the rules and things like that, but for me, it's like a dating period. Like the beginning of
you're
the
auditioning.
Yeah, you're auditioning. You come in. You intern for free for Crass, Blackbird. There's some great schools, and we were talking at the very beginning of the podcast about how important it is to have fundamentals, electronics theory, things that you need to know before you're put into a position. But two things. I always compare it like to being a doctor and you're a resident, and then you eventually get the opportunity to engineer is like being in the operating room holding the heart in your hand.
It's true.
And that's what witnessing an artist's vulnerability, creativity, etc. is. So you come in, you intern, and it's probably the longest that I do it would be like maybe 2 months. Yeah.
No, exactly. But
you can figure out pretty quick.
But I need to know,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to make...
And why should I pay you to teach you? Why am I paying you to teach you?
Can I make an indictment that's going to piss some people off?
I don't care.
If anyone at Berkeley is watching this, get your kids' shit together
there.
My
God.
They have been a nonstop... Every fucking kid who comes out of there, almost every single one, has been most entitled pain in the ass.
This is so fucking poignant.
Sorry, I got to say it.
No, this is so poignant. I tend to not hire from Full Sail. I tend to not hire from Berkeley.
I haven't experienced Full Sail, but I've experienced
I have a recent
Berkeley.
Story that will give you hope. So
There are a couple good ones.
Oh, yeah.
But
no.
the entitlement coming out of there has been maddening.
No, this is important, probably because it's so fucking expensive. But this is important. So Keith, my assistant, my trusty Steed, who's recording us right now, he has a tour, and they're here from Berkeley. And I walk in to the lobby, and I'm like, oh, who are you fine people? And they go, oh, we're from Berkeley. I go, I'm sorry. And then I look at the professor, and I said, but I'm sure you're the best professor ever, and that you've made it a 180-degree turn from everything I've experienced with the recording program from Berkeley. So then, now Berkeley turns out great musicians, okay? We know this. But then I get a call from our friend, John Paterno, who says, Candace, I'm in Boston now, and I'm working at Berkeley, and I'm going to turn this I'm going to turn this theory around. He goes, I'm going to make sure the people that come through the recording program.
I love John,
Dude,
and I hope he does.
He's kicking ass. I think.
That's great.
I think
God,
that
John, you are doing the Lord's work.
You are doing the Lord, and you are pushing a rock up that hill, brother, because you got some. Yeah, I hate to say this, Berkeley people. Contact me, defend yourselves, whatever. The proof is in the pudding. Give me some candidates that are humble, that are engaged, and are willing.
And can keep their fucking mouths
shut. Oh,
shut.
dude, please. And that are willing to go that extra mile. Yeah. Anyway, so that's our rant. There's a lot, again, if you're listening to this, don't go, oh, I'm not going to go to Berkeley.
No.
Like, you either have what it takes or you don't. And the school's going to help you.
Oh, here's a story I always tell, but it's important. When I was interning at Young and Rubicam, I didn't know that no one wants to hear what I think. I didn't know that. So
I still don't want to hear what you think. Anyway,
I'm on a session with Jim Tully and Bob Ransing. There's one of them who wrote Material Girl.
Oh yeah.
And they're playing this thing, and I go like, I'm the intern, and I go, you're trying to sell this effervescent water. Do you really want to use a minor chord? And
oh my God! Did someone turn around and tell you to fuck off?
I got my. Oh my God! The producer, when we left there, I got my ass handed to me. I got my ass handed. I'm 18 years old. I don't know any fucking better. Yeah. But I got my ass handed to me.
We don't want to destroy confidence. It's important, especially once you become an assistant engineer. One of the things you must do is instill confidence in your ability to the people that are working around you. You must make them feel like you have them. I got you covered, whatever you need me to do, first engineer, producer, etc. But at the same time, no one gives two fucks.
And here's the best. If you want to learn something, here's the best way to do it. Never say what you're thinking in front of the client. Wait till the client's gone, and then don't tell your boss. Ask a question.
Yes.
Hey, is there a reason you didn't do this instead of this? Don't go, I think it would sound better if you did this.
And
have you tried? Do you want to try that?
Dude, one important thing that I say when I have meetings, and I think you'll agree with this, is if you get into this thinking, oh, I'm going to be the producer, I'm going to be in charge, or oh, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be in charge. Everybody is serving the music. You are serving the artist. If you are the producer, if you are the first engineer, if you are the assistant, wherever you fall in the hierarchy of making the record, you might be making more money, you might have a little bit more say, but at the end of the day, your job is to be subordinate to the creative, what's happening with the artist. Your job is to make that the best it can be. And that is never going to change. It's never going to always be about you. Okay? It's not going to be. Yeah. You could be the best producer, right? And you will get your accolades, and you will get your acclaim, and you will get your reinforcement from knowing that you did good work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, proof is in the pudding. All right, so you got the house in Beechwood. You got what's happening with JJ now? What is going on with you now?
Oh,
we kind of glossed over like a 30-year period.
Well, here's the fun thing. There was a period where I couldn't work for a year or so because I had wound up in 2 records where I put a lot of work in. I got fucked. Didn't get, and I didn't get, got manager ripped off the artist record. I have to, and I literally
be a good person.
I literally had the Boogie Nights scene where I'm like, where then I'm getting the scene where like, well, just give us, where they're telling me like how the magic is on those recordings. I'm like, Robert Downey Sr. Ring a bell. This is a YM, not a this is a YP, not an MP. This is your problem. And I'm like, you can have these masters when I get fucking paid.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of those in a row, and I was just going.
What's that Hunter Thompson quote? The music business is an empty trench.
We've changed it. It was actually about the network news business, broadcast news business, but we've changed it. There's
It's a trench.
the 90s. Here's one of the things I'm just going to talk about this because I think it's important for people to know in general, because not everyone in music is well adjusted. You know, I had, like
Really?
I said, I got sober when I was 19, and I had a lot of emotional issues that were hell for me in the 90s and early 2000s. And my career probably would have been a lot better if I, you know, like I have friends like John Shanks or something, and I see John, I just like, and he is just fucking, one of the reasons John has the career he's had is because he's relentless. And I have other friends who, you know, Brendan O'Brien, things like that. There was, when they you know, when they were making their bones, they were relentless, and they were in there and they were engaged. And when I was in that period of my life, I just wasn't able to be, you know, and there was a period where I had two just really heartbreaking disasters in a row, and I'm like, I think I'm just going to take photos for a couple years. And then I eventually, you know, wound up in a situation where I wound up I kind of like taking myself out and was just sort of dabbling and not really doing stuff here and there.
Who pulled you back in?
So we're gonna name names.
Yeah.
I got asked to go work with Richard Perry a little bit on the first Rod Stewart Standards record.
Oh, dude, we did some of that here.
Yeah, and so went over to Steve Tyrell's place, did some work with him there, and then it's the second record. We're going to tell stories because fuck it.
Yeah, it's like Jules Chaikin, Richard Perry.
Because whatever. So the record is done as it's basically a competition between Phil Ramone and Richard Perry.
Absolutely.
And the referee is Clive.
Yeah.
And
this is Rod Stewart doing standards,
right.
jazz
standards.
standards.
And so they're on standards record number 2, and Richard has basically gotten himself fired from he turned something in that lost Clive's faith, and Richard's assistant guy comes to me and goes, "Hey, can you let us come in for a couple weeks on spec, get him back on the record?" I wind up engineering for Richard for 2 weeks, basically on spec. Which was a whole nother fucking nightmare getting paid. Once he gets back on the record, and
there is not a sticker that says "sucker" over JJ's head. It all works out.
But there are two things. Richard was under the impression that I wasn't a good engineer or something, because either that, well, plus I stood up to him, and Richard was a bully.
He is a bully.
And I stood up to him.
He's calmed, but he was a bully.
Well, he's...
Yeah.
And I had done these mixes, and the assistant said, "Oh no, you need to do this, this, and that." So I go back and I redo these mixes, and Richard's like, you know, like he had me do like the craziest shit. So I do all that. I'm an idiot. I listen to the assistant, and then Richard listens and goes like, "What? Why is it doing this?" I'm like, "I'm doing exactly what your fucking dude told me to do. Stupid me."
Yeah.
And things like that. But I did, you know, I did wind up on like 2.5 of those of this stuff that, but I no longer became the guy. I was like the backup guy when the guy who was the guy came in, because Richard had lost confidence. Plus, there was a point where everyone left the room except my assistant. On his first day of the job, he was so freaked out. I close the door and I stand up. I go, "Richard, if you talk to me like that again, I'm going to throw you on your fucking ass."
Good.
I was like,
good.
I was like,
good. Yeah, no, there's definitely been some bullies in my career, but I've been lucky, you know, the tough.
So anyway, that was how I then
got back
in, and yeah.
Dude, Rod kills it on those records. He kills it.
He's Rod. I mean,
Rod.
There's that voice.
Yeah, and it's so awesome, and again, so emoting. You know, it's so connecting. That brought standards back to life, where some people had never heard. You know.
Yeah.
So you're back in the fray. Post Perry, perimenopause. No, post Perry. Sorry, Richard. But And then your love is reignited.
Yeah, and I'm,
The passion, the flame is back on.
Part of it, I got married, and she was, sometimes you're at a point in your career where you need a partner who helps you when, or in life.
Support.
Who helps you kind of get back.
Well, someone who believes in you, what a concept.
Into your groove,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what happened. And the marriage ultimately didn't last, but it was, I think we were the right people for each other at the time that we met, and I helped support her in her new career because she was making a big change, and she helped me get back on track to what I was doing, and that was
you know what you. I think it's basic, you know what you want to do. And again, if you're listening to this and you haven't gone to school yet or whatever, if you know that this is what you want to do, don't let anybody stand in your way. Yeah. You'll make it happen one way or another. Part of this is,
and you don't have to be a gig shark either.
Yeah, no, you don't have to take gigs away from other people. Don't be a dick. You don't have to be a dick.
Yeah.
So what are you working on now?
Well, you mention it. I am putting the final polishes on a record I started a couple years before pandemic.
Okay.
With, I have a number of things I'm working on. Some people you've heard of, some people you haven't of. But the one that's the most important to me is the Mike Finnegan record.
Yeah.
And that was, Mike was my best friend. My dad died when I was 9, and Mike was the closest thing I had to a father.
I broke my foot playing basketball with Mike Finnegan at Soundcastle when I was in my 30s.
He was a tremendous. He was a Division I NCAA player.
Dude, ridiculous.
He was tremendous.
Yeah.
So he.
You should say that's how you broke your foot, but that's another story.
No, we were extremely close, and I knew what his wheelhouse was of the thing that, he was not only one of the greatest Hammond B3 players of all time.
I was just about to say one of the greatest B3 players. And Benmont, you're amazing.
One of
Mike,
but they do a different thing.
Yeah, they do.
And they're, and
I'm sure they love you.
They do. Ben does things that Mike couldn't do, and Mike does things that, it's whatever. People didn't know that Mike was one of the greatest blues singers ever, if not the greatest white blues singers ever.
So good.
And had made so much of a career as a session singer, and was the voice of whatever the Monday Night Football song was for years, things like that.
Oh, wow.
And I had never heard a record that I thought really featured him in that light. When Jerry Wexler was given his own label, Mike was the first guy he signed.
Wow.
They made a record that you're kind of like, huh. And Jerry apparently wrote Mike an apology letter going like, I A&R'd this wrong. I picked the wrong material for you. I was just trying to show all the things you can do instead of getting like the strong point. Mike did New York State of Mind before Billy Joel even did it.
Wow. I would love to hear that.
Yeah, but you listen, it's like, this isn't really, I get this, that this is a great singer and a great song, but if you knew what Mike could do, you're like, the Governor's on here. This isn't doing the thing that made him like the badass he was.
I haven't heard enough of Mike. I mean, I've heard him sing, and I think he's fucking amazing. But I haven't heard enough of the stuff that I would consider, like you're saying, like the kind of the soul.
I'll let you hear it. So, so I had been bugging him for years, and for various reasons, he just wasn't. He was reticent to do it, and I finally just
begged him.
I said, look, let's go into East West for a day. You pick a song, I pick a song. If you hate it, we'll forget it ever happened. If you like it, let's see if we can get a deal or something. And it was magic. Our very first, like the first take of the day was I
don't even know which room. Were you in 2?
We were in 2.
Okay.
Of course we're in 2. Well, whatever fucking room we're in. We're doing and live vocal, doing a B.B. King song, Don't Answer the Door. And
see, that's what that's perfect.
It's and the very first take is the take, and it's the one, and it's like, and I play it for people. People say stupid shit like, "Oh, that's going to win a Grammy." I'm like, you don't understand how Grammys work, but but yes, it is that good. It sends shivers down your spine, and we're lucky enough to have video of showing the thing that Mike could do, which is operating every inch of dynamic of a Hammond organ while singing his ass off.
Dude, mad props.
And doing that thing, and he got really excited about it, and I was trying to get a deal, and we were slowly. I just keep painting on my pocket. We kept coming in dribs and drabs. We came in one more session, did another couple songs, then we came in for a few days and did a bunch more songs.
Who all plays on the record?
So we have the constants on everything are Mike on keys. Actually, it's not constants on everything because I did 2 songs with Jack Shit, which is Pete Thomas, Val McCallum, and Davey Farragher, because I wanted them to sing.
I dig them.
I wanted them to sing live with him on one song.
Yeah.
But aside from that, Bob Glob is the bass player on everything. Josh Sklar is the guitar player on everything, and then I had David Goodstein, Tony Bronigal, and James Gadsden as drummers.
All great drummers. Tony's fucking badass.
Yeah,
they're all badass.
And then there's various, I had various guest people come in and do solos, but because Mike got sick before we could finish all the vocals, there's a couple songs I had to have guest vocalists come in. I just had Steven and Chris Stills sing on one song. I had Smokey and James Gadsden and Dorian Hawley sing on another song.
No slouches.
And then your old employee, Mike's son, Kelly Finnegan.
So good.
He does a duet with Mike that Mike was so good, I was able to take Mike's scratch takes, and I'm so lucky that I get to work with Dorian and all these other people all the time. So I get to have people like Dorian and Kenya Hathaway and Wendy Wagner and Amy Keys and Charlotte Gibson, come in and lay down the most fantastic background vocals and
dude,
it's gotten expensive.
Again, yeah, well,
it's all come out of my pocket.
Well,
I need to find a label, by the way.
I do, and you definitely should. It's too late to submit for this year, but you should submit it for next year's Grammy for sure.
Well, it's got to come out first.
Well, yeah, that needs to happen.
Yeah, I can't, but it's. Yeah,
well, I have to think on that. Maybe I don't know if I could help. Maybe I could help.
Well, if you can, you can. But I gotta say, we're making this record, and one of the things I said to Mike is, I said, this is how I framed it. I said, Mike, you know what? There's no budgets anymore, so I'm either working for artists who are producing themselves, and they're hiring me as an engineer, or I have other producers hiring me as their engineer, and just let me produce you so I can fucking produce. This was part of how I would talk them into feeling sorry for me. And it's just one of those.
No, but again, trust.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I get to use my skill, my talent, everything that I've learned, and put myself in a situation, and I'm hearing something that it's you feel kind of like this was meant to happen, sort of. This is kismet. Yeah. This is.
Well,
and then I'm getting to be of service to the memory and talent of somebody
it's an inspired project, and absolutely one of the many testaments to his career and to his ability. And I'm sure he's smiling down from heaven, laughing, going, JJ, it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
it's going to be more than okay. He wants people to hear it.
Yeah,
someone's going to sign it. It's going to work out.
Yeah, I know it's going to work. It's just not worked out. There've been after he passed, there were so many obstacles to me finishing the record, which I finally have, as of last week, I have all the tracks done finally.
How many tracks are there?
I think there's 10.
Okay. But this is an emotional thing for me, and I'm not even part of it.
But it was a lesson in patience. Just whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen when it happens, and that's going to be the right thing. And there hasn't been anything that's gone down where I'm like, that's the wrong thing. It's all on the right thing.
The thing that's so cool about this, and we keep saying this over and over, everybody that worked with you on that project and sees the sincerity and the intent behind what you're doing, you're going to get more gigs. And that's not why you did it, but you're going to get more gigs because those people that you're working with on there, someone's going to say, oh, you know, I got hired to do background vocals on this. I don't know, we need to book a studio. We need to hire an engineer. Yeah. Let's call JJ.
Well, by the way, I'm going to take the focus off of me for 1 second. Go back to one thing that's very important that you just said. Oh. I did a record. We just put, my friends and I, after one of the Rod records, we did this. I had this crazy idea, which became this record called Kind of Black by the Casualties of Jazz. That I was just like, this is a cool idea.
Name,
Let's cut this. We cut it in 3 days. We put it out, and it got this. And the idea was like, I'm just going to put this out there so people know this is what I can do. You know, and we didn't make any money on it, but it became like sort of an underground sensation, a culty thing, and you know, and it became a favorite record of a lot of front of house guys that play before shows and things like that.
Cool.
And sometimes you want to do stuff not for money, but just as a reputation builder, you
Absolutely.
know, and it might cost, you know, like there might be something that you can do that is your calling card. And I know a lot of people try to do that and aren't very successful, and especially the way social media is, everyone's trying to use it in that way. But that is, you know, as the kids say, I'm building my brand.
Yeah. Well, no, that.
Do they say that anymore, or is that like 5 years ago?
No, they say that. They definitely say that. Influencers say that. I have a question. How can you be an influencer when you're 20 and you haven't even lived life yet? Why would I listen to you?
I'm an outfluencer.
Yeah, me.
I'm an outfluencer.
Yeah,
I'm not an influencer.
I'm like later. Yeah,
I'm evidence
of what you shouldn't do.
I'm not going to tell you what not to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to say, I'm going to be an influencer who goes, don't do this.
Yeah.
It's going to be I just came up with my new routine.
I love it.
Thank you.
It's great. Thank you. Well, I'm super excited to hear it.
Don't use 421s on toms, kids.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, and don't use tube mics on kick drums either, fuckers. Yeah, or at least don't use mine. Anyway, I think we're kind of. We've rambled for too long.
I could
have like 6
Jesus
episodes.
Christ, this is like 2 hours of bullshit.
Great. I could have like 6 episodes. I don't really ever cut it. You know, I had a young kid who's doing really well. He used to work here. His name is Andy Masters, and he's doing great, doing like YouTube stuff and everything. And he told me, he's like, don't worry about how long it is. He goes, people love you, and they're going to love who you're talking to. And I'm like, oh. And he's like, no, they want to know. They want to hear about it. Yeah, I get it. We'll find out. But the reason that I did this, is because I want to talk to everybody I love before we all get too old and start dropping. And also because I always tell Paula this, I never took pictures. Like all the pictures that Paula had in her office, I never took pictures of people. It felt inappropriate or whatever to like go, hey, take a picture with me. But this I can do. This I can talk to the people that I love. And I learned so much about everybody. The people that I've known for like 30 or 40 years, I've learned so much about. Like, I didn't know Jim Scott's dad worked with Lee Iacocca. You know, that's fucking crazy at Chrysler. But I want to wrap this up by saying that every person that I talk to on here, the common thread, it doesn't matter. I mean, the journeys are all different for how they ended up being an engineer or a producer or an artist or whatever it was. Everybody's journey is different. There's no one way to get anywhere. So if you're listening to this, know that. And don't be scared. Follow your own path. And just, you know, do your best.
Yeah.
You know, do your best. Like, have integrity. Boom, mic drop. That's the end of this episode. Yeah, have integrity. And I love you so much. And thank you for being here. I know.
This is fun.
It's super fun, right?
I'll shut up now.
Super. You're fucking awesome. You're fucking awesome, dude. So yeah, I can't wait to actually listen back to this. But anyway, that is the end of this episode. Thank you so much.
Bye, boys and girls.